I pulled up to Michelle's house with a plate of cookies I'd baked the night before, and a small gift bag tucked under my arm. It wasn't much, just a handmade photo album of her childhood pictures, and one of the silk scarves I used to wear when she was a little girl. I even ironed my best blouse, the burgundy one she always said made me look classy. As I parked by the curb, I could hear laughter spilling from the open windows. Warm yellow light danced inside the house. It was beautiful. The big wreath on the door, the twinkling garlands, even a golden Merry Christmas sign above the entrance. I smiled. I'd helped pay for all of it. Well, most of it. The custom lights, the marble porch, the front door itself. I'd told myself I wasn't doing it for thanks. I was doing it for Michelle, for my only daughter. I walked up the path slowly, my heart beating faster than I expected. My fingers tightened around the gift bag. I don't know why, but something in my gut felt off. Still, I shook the feeling away. I knocked gently, expecting someone, anyone, to open the door with a smile. It wasn't even 10 seconds before Michelle opened it. She looked startled, like she wasn't expecting me. She had a red dress on, her makeup flawless, her hair done the way she used to wear it in high school when she was going to a party. "Mom," she said, blinking fast. "What are you doing here?" I was confused. I came for Christmas dinner. You told me last month it was still at your place." She stepped outside and pulled the door halfway closed behind her, like she was hiding something. Or someone. Her voice dropped. "Listen," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Things changed. Isaac's parents decided to host a private family dinner here this year. They're very particular. They wanted it to be just them and their sons." I laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. "But I'm your mother." She bit her lip. "I know. But they think it's awkward if too many people are here. They like things a certain way." I felt something in my chest tighten. "So you're saying I'm not welcome?" Her eyes darted past me toward the driveway. "It's not that, Mom. It's just for tonight. It's not personal." It wasn't personal, but it cut deeper than anything that ever had been. I stood there, stunned. I looked at the house again. My name wasn't on the mortgage, but I'd paid for most of it. From the kitchen remodel to the patio set, she'd borrowed money for. Even the down payment 5 years ago had come from the retirement fund I was too embarrassed to admit I no longer had. I looked back at her, my daughter, the same girl I held through fevers, the one I'd worked double shifts for so she could have ballet shoes and a prom dress. And now she was closing the door on me because her husband's parents were embarrassed I wasn't high society enough. I took a breath. My lips curled into a small smile. Not angry, not sad, just tired. "All right," I said, nodding. "Have a good Christmas, Michelle." I handed her the gift bag. She didn't take it. She just stood there, frozen. I turned, walked down the steps slowly, and got into my car. The cold leather seat stung the back of my legs. I sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the tears to come. But they didn't. Instead, I pulled out of the driveway and started driving home. The roads were quiet. Everyone was where they belonged, around warm tables, laughing, sharing meals. I passed houses lit up with colored bulbs, kids throwing snowballs, a man dragging a sled up a hill. And me? I was driving home alone. When I got home, I took off my coat, poured myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The scarf I meant to gift her stayed in the bag on the counter. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat in the quiet, thinking about how you can give everything to someone and still not be enough. The morning after Christmas, I woke up before the sun. I hadn't slept much. My body was still, but my mind never stopped replaying Michelle's face at the door. Tight-lipped, nervous, embarrassed. Like I was a problem she needed to manage. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, just the humming of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dim gray of early morning, holding my warm mug, thinking. 5 years. That's how long I'd been sending money every month to help Michelle and Isaac stay afloat. It started when they were newly married, young and struggling like most couples. They wanted to buy a house right away, something respectable before Isaac's parents came visiting from out of state. Michelle called me crying, saying they couldn't qualify for the loan on their own. I didn't hesitate. I broke a CD account early and wired her $40,000 for the down payment. She promised it was temporary. After that came the furniture, then renovations, then unexpected costs every few months. There was always something. The kitchen backsplash Michelle had to have before Evelyn came to visit. The landscaping. The new AC unit when the old one made weird noises. I said yes each time, even when it meant skipping meals some months or pushing back my own dental work. I told myself it was just money, and she was my daughter. But the calls became less frequent. First, they dropped to once a week, then once a month. Eventually, I'd only hear from Michelle when she needed something, and every time I asked if we could see each other, maybe dinner, maybe a weekend visit, she'd say they were so busy or out of town or hosting Isaac's relatives. I told myself it wasn't personal. Young people get overwhelmed. I didn't want to be one of those overbearing moms who clings too tight, so I made excuses for her. I told my friends she was working hard, that Isaac had gotten promoted, that they were traveling a lot for business. The truth was, I didn't know what was going on in her life anymore. Last summer, I tried to surprise her. I baked her favorite coconut cake and drove 3 hours just to drop it off. But when I rang the bell, no one answered. I left the cake on the porch and drove home. No text, no call. Later that week, I saw photos online. She was in Napa Valley with Evelyn and Charles, wine tasting, all smiles and designer dresses. I never said anything. That's what hurt the most. Not the money, not the distance, but how easy it was for her to erase me, to let me fade out of the picture while pretending everything was fine. And I went along with it because I didn't want to believe my own daughter would push me aside for convenience or shame. After Christmas night, the fog finally lifted. I started pulling out old records, receipts, bank transfers, email threads where she promised to repay me as soon as Isaac gets his bonus. I opened folders I hadn't touched in years. Looking at the numbers now, I felt sick. I'd given over $170,000, quietly, willingly, but always believing I was helping build her future. That morning, I opened my old planner and flipped through the pages. On nearly every month, there was a little note beside her name, sent rent help, Isaac's surgery bill, Michelle called, needs $600. It was all there, a trail of giving. But in all those pages, I couldn't find one moment where she'd just called to say, "I miss you, Mom." The silence had been growing for years. I just hadn't noticed it getting louder. I stood up and walked to the hallway mirror. I looked older than I remembered. Not just tired, but worn, like someone who had been waiting too long to be seen. I don't know what changed in me that morning, but something did. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel sad. I felt awake. It was the first week of December when Michelle called. Her voice was sugary sweet, the kind she only used when she wanted something. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since I texted on her birthday and got a generic thanks with no follow-up. "Hi, Mom," she chirped. "I hope you've been well. Listen, I wanted to ask you something small." I already knew it wasn't going to be small. She went on to tell me how Isaac's parents were planning to spend Christmas at their house this year. It would be the first time the Montgomerys had agreed to visit them for the holidays instead of hosting at their estate. Michelle said she wanted everything to be perfect. "They're used to a certain standard," she said, chuckling nervously. "You know how Evelyn is. She notices everything." I stayed silent. She continued. "So, we're updating the kitchen flooring before they arrive. The tiles are outdated, and the new ones we love are a little pricey. We also want to change out the dining room lighting. It's kind of dim. I was wondering, would you be able to help us out with the costs? Just a little?" I looked around my own kitchen. The linoleum was peeling in one corner. My microwave made a strange rattling noise every time it ran. I hadn't updated a single thing in 10 years. Still, I asked, "How much do you need?" "Just 5,000, she said quickly, as if saying it fast would make it sound smaller. "But if that's too much, maybe even 3 would help. I mean, you always say you want the house to feel like a home, right?" I didn't say anything for a few seconds. She added, "Of course, I'll pay you back once Isaac's year-end bonus comes through. Should be mid-January." That was a line I'd heard before. "All right," I said finally. "I'll send you 3. "Really? Oh my God, thank you, Mom. You're amazing." The call ended as quickly as it began. No, "How are you doing?" No, "Do you need anything?" Just the ask, the money, and a quick goodbye. I wired the money that afternoon. I don't know what I was hoping for. Gratitude, maybe. A thank you note. An invitation to help hang decorations. Something that made me feel like I was still part of their lives. But instead, 4 days later, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Michelle's annual Christmas card. The envelope was glossy and heavy, like a wedding invitation. I smiled a little. Maybe this was her way of including me. I opened it slowly and unfolded the trifold card. On the front was a professionally photographed picture of Michelle and Isaac standing on their newly renovated porch holding wine glasses. Between them, smiling brightly, stood Evelyn and Charles Montgomery. Inside were more pictures: the kitchen, the dining room chandelier, a perfectly decorated tree, laughter, matching outfits. But I wasn't in any of them. No mention of me. No "Merry Christmas, Mom." No note. Just a printed message that read, "Wishing you warmth, elegance, and the joy of togetherness from the Montgomery family." The Montgomery family. I sat down at the kitchen table, holding the card in both hands, staring at it. I don't remember how long I sat there. I thought about how Michelle used to make cards by hand as a child, how she used glitter glue and crooked stickers. She always made sure to draw a heart beside my name. This card had no heart, just polished smiles and expensive lighting. I set it down and pushed it away. My tea had gone cold. The house felt smaller than usual, and quiet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked anymore. But something in me shifted that day. A slow, aching pull deep in my chest. Not rage, not resentment. Just the sharp, undeniable awareness that I no longer had a seat at my daughter's table, and maybe I hadn't for a long time. The morning after I received that Christmas card, I sat with it one last time before folding it neatly and placing it in the bottom drawer of my kitchen cabinet. I didn't throw it away. Not yet. But I couldn't stand looking at it anymore. The smiles in those photos weren't meant for me. That day, I made a decision. I would no longer fund my own erasure. I pulled out my laptop, hands trembling only slightly, and opened my banking app. For years, I had automatic transfers set up to Michelle's mortgage account, small monthly deposits that helped them cover their inflated lifestyle. I had told myself it was just temporary, that they'd find their footing soon. But 5 years had passed, and nothing changed. Until now. With a deep breath, I clicked the button and canceled the recurring payments. My heart pounded. It felt like I was cutting an umbilical cord I had kept alive far too long. Next, I opened a dusty filing box from my hall closet. Inside were receipts, printed emails, wire transfer slips, years of financial records I'd kept without knowing why. Now, I knew why. I spread them across my kitchen table, arranging them by date, reading through every message. "Thanks, Mom, you saved us again. We couldn't have done this without you. I'll pay you back after tax season." Promises, gratitude, excuses. They all blended together. Looking at the numbers made my stomach twist. $40,000 for the down payment, $9,200 for kitchen renovations, another $3,000 for Michelle's dental surgery when she said insurance wouldn't cover it. Countless small transfers that added up to tens of thousands, over $170,000. I had done it willingly, out of love, out of guilt, out of hope that it would bring us closer. Now I realized it only pushed us further apart. I called the utility company next. Years ago, when Michelle was pregnant, I'd offered to cover their electric bill for a few months. Somehow, that few months became 5 years. I ended that too. By noon, I had removed myself from every financial tie I had to them. The silence in my house felt different now. Not empty, but peaceful, like the noise had finally settled. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Michelle. I let it go to voicemail. A few hours later, she texted, "Hey, Mom, weird thing. The mortgage didn't go through today. Bank error, can you check on your end?" I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. 2 days later, another message. "Mom, are you okay? Can we talk?" I turned the phone over and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors were putting up decorations. Little kids ran around with tinsel. I used to dream of having holidays filled with grandkids and laughter. Maybe I still could, but not like this. Not in a house where I was good enough to fund the celebration, but not to attend it. That evening, I sat with a notepad and wrote down everything. Not for revenge, not yet, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the giving, the helping, the silence that followed. And the worst part wasn't that Michelle used me. It was that she never questioned it. Like my sacrifices were expected. Like her comfort was my job. Like I was supposed to give, quietly, forever. The truth was, I had let it happen. But that Christmas changed everything. I stopped being afraid of losing her, because I finally realized I never truly had her to begin with. When my phone buzzed again that night, I didn't check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, turned off the lights, and sat on my porch under the stars. The air was cold, but for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Free. A week passed. I hadn't answered Michelle's texts or calls, though she kept trying. At first, she was polite, then confused, then annoyed. I could feel it through the short, clipped messages. She didn't ask if I was okay anymore. She just wanted to know what was going on with the money. I stayed quiet. But one cold Thursday morning, as I stepped outside to collect my mail, something stopped me. Folded between a grocery flyer and a holiday catalog was a small, glossy newsletter. It was the Hillside Journal, a local monthly sent to residents in the upscale part of town, mostly full of recipes, real estate listings, and social events. I almost tossed it out until a bold headline caught my eye. "When Parents Overstep, the Pitfalls of Financial Entitlement." My stomach dropped. It wasn't until I read the third paragraph that I knew it was about me. They hadn't used my name, but the description was unmistakable. An elderly woman in our community recently caused trouble for her daughter's young family by demanding repayment for gifts given over the years. She believed her financial support entitled her to control their lives, even during the holidays. Unfortunately, entitlement like this can be deeply toxic. There it was, laid out for all of Hillside to read. I sank into the porch chair, the newsletter shaking in my hands. The article continued, painting me as manipulative, bitter, and jealous of my daughter's success. They even quoted an anonymous friend close to the family who said I'd always struggled to let go and had a tendency to guilt trip. I didn't need to guess who that anonymous source was. I sat there for a long time, reading the article over and over. Each word burned. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was the way it turned everything upside down. I'd never asked for a dime back. I never raised my voice, never made demands. I gave because I loved Michelle. And because she asked. Over and over again. Now, in one short article, they'd rewritten our entire history. I called Margaret, an old friend of mine who still worked part-time at the community center. She read the piece too. Her voice dropped to a whisper on the phone. "Denise? Did you know Evelyn Montgomery sits on the newsletter board? She funds half their events?" That explained everything. This wasn't just gossip. It was a carefully planned humiliation. A warning shot. I had embarrassed them by cutting the money off. Now they wanted to shame me into silence. I felt rage stir in my chest, but underneath that something stronger. Resolve. I opened my filing cabinet again, this time with purpose. I made copies of everything, bank transfers, messages, even old birthday cards where Michelle wrote, "Thank you for always helping us. I don't know how we'd make it without you." I printed screenshots of texts. I downloaded voicemail backups. I wasn't going to stoop to their level, but I wasn't going to sit back and let them rewrite the truth either. The next day, I walked into a local print shop and had everything organized into a simple black binder. Clear sleeves, dividers, labels by year. I even included a list of dates with short descriptions beside each one. By the time I was done, I had documented 5 years of silent giving. Proof, not just for the world, but for myself, that I wasn't imagining things, that I had been more than generous, that I had been used. I looked at that binder and felt something shift. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my name. Later that evening, I placed the binder in my handbag and stared out the window. I knew what I needed to do next, and I knew exactly when to do it. Christmas dinner. Christmas. I hadn't planned to go, not at first. But when I received a kind, unexpected call from Mrs. Halpern, a retired teacher and old family friend who'd known Michelle since childhood, my mind changed. "I heard what they printed about you," she said gently, "and I don't believe a word. In fact, I was invited to their Christmas dinner this year. Evelyn's trying to turn it into some grand charity showcase. Would you like to come as my guest?" I hesitated. I didn't want a scene. But I also couldn't forget the look on Michelle's face when she shut the door on me, or the lies published under the guise of community awareness. So I said yes. I wore my best navy blue coat and tied my hair back the way Michelle used to like when she was little. In my handbag was the black binder, neatly zipped, nothing flashy, just facts. Mrs. Halpern and I arrived early. The house looked like something out of a magazine. Gleaming lights, a glowing fireplace through the window, and valet parking at the curb. I wondered how much of it was paid for with the money I'd sent over the years. Inside, everything smelled of cinnamon and roasted ham. Laughter filled the air. People held wine glasses, complimented the decor, and admired the centerpiece, a tall arrangement of red roses and gold-painted pine cones. Then I saw her, Michelle, standing beside Evelyn, both in red velvet dresses. Isaac was busy shaking hands near the tree. When Michelle spotted me, her smile faltered. "Mom?" I nodded. "Merry Christmas." She looked stunned. "You weren't... How did you..." "I'm here with Mrs. Halpern," I said calmly. She insisted. Michelle glanced at Evelyn, who was already approaching. Her smile was tight. "Denise," Evelyn said with a tone that sounded like she was speaking to a stray cat. "I didn't expect you tonight." "I'm aware," I replied. I looked around at the guests, many of whom were people I'd seen in the Hillside newsletter before. Business owners, retired judges, church board members. The same people who'd likely read the article. "May I say a few words before dinner?" I asked. Evelyn blinked. "Excuse me?" I turned to the guests and spoke loud enough to be heard, but soft enough not to alarm. "I won't take long," I said. "I just want to share a few things. From the heart." A few people quieted. Michelle's mouth opened, then closed. She didn't stop me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder. I didn't hold it high or wave it around. I simply placed it on the buffet table, opened it gently, and began. "I've loved my daughter with all my heart," I said. Everything I gave was out of love, not out of expectation. But this Christmas, after being told I wasn't welcome, I realized love isn't just about giving. It's also about being seen. I didn't mention the article. I didn't need to. I flipped to the first page and handed a few people nearby copies I'd prepared. Bank transfers, thank you notes, screenshots of messages. "This is 5 years of support," I continued. "Not because I had extra, but because I believed in my daughter's future. The room was silent. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Isaac looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Michelle didn't say a word. "I never asked for recognition," I said, "but I won't stand quietly while my name is dragged through mud to protect appearances." I closed the binder. If helping my daughter makes me overbearing, then so be it. But I know the truth, and I believe others deserve to know it too. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I simply nodded, turned, and walked toward the front door. Before I left, I looked back one last time. Michelle was still standing there, frozen as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I didn't need applause. I didn't need anyone to follow me. But I left with something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Pride. I didn't answer my phone for 3 days. After I left their Christmas dinner, I went home, changed into my flannel pajamas, and sat on the couch with a warm blanket and a cup of chamomile tea. The house was still and peaceful. No noise, no judgment, no pretending. I turned off my phone that night. I didn't want to hear excuses or explanations. I didn't want another message from Michelle starting with, "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." I just wanted quiet. After all these years, it was the first time I chose silence for me. When I finally powered it back on, the screen lit up with notifications. 50 missed calls. Mostly from Michelle. A few from Isaac. One from a number I recognized as Evelyn's landline. Even Charles had tried once. Then came the text messages, paragraphs, apologies, voice notes, photos of Michelle crying, sitting on the floor, messages that said things like, "Mom, please call me." I messed up. I never wanted it to go this far. She told me how the guests at dinner were stunned, how some quietly left early, how Mrs. Halpern pulled her aside and said, "Your mother deserved better." How people in the community, those who had read that article, started asking questions. The lies didn't hold up after the binder. Evelyn's carefully crafted image cracked. Rumors spread. Donations were withdrawn. Charles lost a seat on one of the local boards. The Montgomery's social standing took a hit that wouldn't be easy to repair. And Michelle? She said she hadn't stopped crying since Christmas night. She admitted she knew what Evelyn was doing. She confessed that she'd kept silent because she was afraid of losing their approval, afraid of rocking the boat, afraid of being seen as too soft. But somewhere in all those voice notes, I heard something I hadn't heard in years. Honesty. I didn't respond right away. I listened. I let her sit in her own silence for a while, because sometimes silence teaches louder than words. On the 4th day, I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Her voice broke as soon as she spoke. "Mom." I didn't rush her. I let her cry. I didn't ask why. I already knew. "I'm so sorry," she said through sobs. "I was wrong. I let them turn me into someone I'm not. I watched them treat you like you were beneath them, and I said nothing. I just let it happen." I listened. I thought if I kept things peaceful, I could keep everyone happy. But in the end, I lost you. And that's the one person I never wanted to lose. Her voice cracked again. "You gave me everything, and I treated you like nothing." I closed my eyes, pressed the phone closer to my ear. "I don't want your money, Mom. I don't want anything. I just want a second chance." I was quiet for a while before I said, "It was never about the money, Michelle." She cried harder. I told her I wasn't ready to jump back into things, but I wasn't shutting the door either. I needed time. I needed proof, not in dollars or flowers or long speeches, but in how she chose to show up going forward. And she said she understood. After we hung up, I sat on the porch again. The sun was just starting to set, casting soft gold across the street. Kids were playing nearby, their laughter floating through the air. For the first time in years, my heart felt lighter. I'd spent so long giving everything I had, hoping someone would see me. It took walking away for them to finally look. I don't know what will happen with Michelle. Some wounds take longer to heal. But I do know this. I found my voice. I stood my ground. And I remembered who I was before I became someone's silent support system. And that was the real gift this Christmas.